There are many different PC components out there that could make it hard to come up with certain builds at different prices. Today, we will be going over the best options for $500 builds, $1,000 builds, and $2,000 builds for both Intel and AMD. To start off with, we have a $500 build from Intel. The heart of this build is the Pentium G4560. It has only 2 cores, but it also does have 4 threads, so it should not have any problems when gaming. It comes with the Intel stock cooler, which is nothing special, but it should get the job done. It'll be going into the MSI B250M Pro VD motherboard, which is a very bare bones board. It has 2 RAM slots and also supports M.2. Our RAM is a single 8GB stick of Corsair Vengeance LPX at 2400 MHz. For our storage, we will be going with a WD Blue 1TB hard drive as well as a 120GB SSD from Kingston. You could choose to take out the SSD completely and upgrade something like your GPU as well if you would like. Our graphics card will be the GTX 1050 Ti from EVGA. It has 4GB of video memory, so it should handle your games pretty well for a while to come. Our case is the Thermaltake Versa H15, which is a micro ATX case. I went with the windowless version, but you can also get the windowed version if you choose. Finally, we have an EVGA 500W power supply, which is a bit overkill and will definitely be enough for our system. The total price of this build is $482, which leaves you with some room to upgrade something if you choose. Next, we have a $500 build from AMD. This was a bit tough to do, as it was built with the Ryzen 5 processor, as Ryzen 3 has not yet been released. For that reason, I'd personally suggest you to wait for Ryzen 3, which would fit this budget much better. If you were still looking to build an AMD system for this price, then this would be the build for you. Our processor is the Ryzen 5 1400. It has 4 cores and 8 threads, which will be certainly enough for a while. The motherboard is the ASRock AB350M HDV. Again, it is a very basic board. It has a B350 chipset, which means that it supports overclocking. It has only 2 RAM slots, which is to be expected, but it does support M.2 in case you ever wanted to add some super fast storage. Ryzen has many benefits from going with faster memory, so I went with a single 8GB stick of Ripjaws 5, which is rated at 2800 MHz. For storage, we only went with a single 1TB hard drive from Western Digital, but you could easily upgrade in the future to include an SSD. Its GPU is the EVGA GTX 1050 Ti, again with 4GB of video memory, and it should run games very well. Lastly, the case that we are going with is the CS305BK. It might not seem like anything spectacular, but it does come with a 480W power supply, which will be enough power for this system. For a total of $503, it'll certainly be a good Ryzen build. Stepping it up a bit, we have a $1,000 build from Intel, which is using a Core i5 7600K Kaby Lake processor. It has an unlocked multiplier, so it does support overclocking, but it does not come with a stock cooler. Because of that, I chose a Cooler Master Hyper 212 EVO to keep this thing cool. It is a very quiet and cool air cooler, and it should get the job done. The motherboard is an MSI Z270 SLI Plus, an ATX board that does support SLI as well as Crossfire. It has a nice color scheme, which will go well for anyone who is going for a black and white build. It also does support M.2 and has 4 RAM slots. It is an overclockable chipset, which will go good with our CPU. The RAM is 16GB of Ripjaws 5, rated at 2800 MHz. So it is quite fast. We are getting 2 8GB sticks, which means we have 2 more slots to upgrade in the future. Our storage is the 1TB hard drive from Western Digital, as well as a 120GB HyperX Fury SSD. The graphics card is the GTX 1070 Mini, which has 8GB of VRAM and will rock games at even 1440p. We are also going to be using the EVGA 600W non-modular power supply, which should get the job done. Using a mini card and this non-modular power supply might make things look a little bit weird, but it does not matter as we are going to be going with the windowless Corsair 200R for our case. This build total is $1,057, which is a little bit over the budget, but that could easily be changed if you go with slower memory and a different Z270 board. The $1,000 PC on the red team is built around the AMD Ryzen 5 1600. It is a 6-core processor with 12 threads that is clocked at 3.2 GHz, which will make a great gaming and workstation machine. It does come with its own stock cooler, which is what I chose for this build, but if you have more to spend, you could always go with something like the Hyper 212 EVO. The MSI B350 PC Mate is the motherboard chosen for this build. It does support Crossfire and M.2, but not SLI. It too has 4 RAM slots, which will be good for the future, and does support overclocking. The storage is once again a Western Digital 1TB hard drive and a Kingston 120GB SSD. We are able to fit in the Gigabyte GTX 1070 WindForce GPU. It looks great, performs great, and will overclock very nicely. Our case is the popular NZXT S340, which does have a window, a PSU shroud, and will go well with the rest of the build. Lastly, we once again have the EVGA 600-watt power supply. It all totals out to be $1,007, which is just over the $1,000 budget, and will perform great for that price. For the PC enthusiasts out there, we have a $2,000 Intel build. It is centered around the Kaby Lake i7-7700K unlocked processor. It'll be cooled by the Kraken X62 liquid cooler, an amazing cooler that will perform great and has RGB lighting. The CPU will rest inside of the MSI Z270 SLI Plus, which will support SLI and Crossfire in case you ever want to go with a second GPU. For productivity, we went with 4x8GB sticks of DDR4 RAM from Kingston for a total of 32GB. It is rated at 2133 MHz and will be great for editing and streaming. Our storage options are both from Western Digital, and they are the WD Blue 4TB hard drive and WD Blue 250GB SSD. The Zotac GTX 1080 Ti AMP Edition 11GB graphics card is what will be pushing all of our graphics power and will easily play games at 1440p and even at 4K. For a bit of future proofing, we have chosen the Corsair 1000 watt fully modular power supply, which is rated at 80 plus platinum efficiency. This is all going to be going into the NZXT S340 in black, which is a very popular and clean case and will go nicely with the rest of the build. A few dollars were saved on this one, which will save you some money to spend on anything extra that you want, whether it's a different component or something like custom power supply cables. The total price of this build came out to be $1,966. Jumping right in on the AMD side, we will be going with the Ryzen 7 1800X 8-core 16-thread processor, which is clocked at 3.6 GHz. It is going to be cooled by the H100i V2 liquid cooler, which will certainly get the job done and keep the CPU cool. The motherboard is the MSI X370 SLI Plus, which shares many similarities to the Z270 board that I showed earlier, as it too supports SLI, Crossfire, and M.2. The RAM was very important for this build, as Ryzen benefits greatly from fast memory, which is why I chose the 4x8GB kit of 2800 MHz G-Skill Ripjaws 5. This high capacity kit will be perfect for editing, gaming, and just about any other needs that you may have. After that, pretty much everything is identical to the $2,000 Intel build. It will have a 4TB hard drive and 250GB SSD from Western Digital. It'll also have the Zotac GTX 1080 Ti AMP Edition and will be housed in the black NZXT S340. The only other thing is the PSU, which is a little bit more reasonable. It is the EVGA Supernova 850W 80 plus gold power supply, which is fully modular. This build total will be $2,011. So hopefully this video cleared some stuff up for you guys. If you have any questions, you can let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you guys later.